I simply can't imagine the last 8 years without Nancy. The presidency wouldn't have been the joy it's been for me without her there beside me. And that second floor living quarters in the White House would have seemed a big and lonely spot without her waiting for me every day at the end of the day.
Hi, I'm Melissa, and welcome to this month's Live from at the Reagan Library. Remember, we do these on the first Wednesday of every month. So yesterday, March 4th, 2025, marked what would have been the 73rd wedding anniversary of President and Mrs. Reagan. As such, we're going to spend today's Live From talking about their love story and highlighting some of the objects we have on display that showcase that love. Now, Charlton Heston once called their love the greatest love affair of the American presidency. And when President Reagan used to speak of his relationship with Mrs. Reagan, he used to quote a movie line he did when he was an actor, which was, God must think a lot of me to have given me you. In fact, he also often said his life didn't begin until he met Nancy. So sort of how did they meet and what was that story? What really started as a sort of chance meeting between two movie stars ultimately became a love story worthy of its own Hollywood movie. It was 1949, the fall of 1949, and Ronald Reagan was the president of the Screen Actors Guild, or SAG, and Nancy Davis was a young actress. Now, she was having a lot of problems because she was being confused with another actress of the exact same name who had ties to a communist front group. She was trying to figure out how to sort of get separated from that other Nancy Davis. She was asking her friends what she should do to get help, and they told her she should reach out to the SAG president. So she called Ronald Reagan. The two agreed to meet for dinner, and what started as a simple dinner ended up them staying together almost the whole night talking, and within just a few months they were inseparable. Now, to avoid the intrusion of the Hollywood press, just a few years later in 1952, they got married at the Little Brown Church in the Valley. It was so private, in fact, that it was just Ronald Reagan and Nancy Davis, the minister, and then their good friends, a married couple, William and Ardis Holden, who acted as the best man and the matron of honor. Now, we are going to showcase some of the items we have on display, like I said, but before we do that, we are going to go to the screens. I think I forgot to tell you that. As always, we go to the screens, talk to you live, so whether you're watching on Facebook or you're watching on YouTube, simply go to that comment box section right now, because I'm going to you right now. Just simply type in your name and where you're watching from. I'll say hello and give you a shout out, or if you have a question about what we're talking about or the Reagan Library, put that in the comment box section as well, and I will do my best to answer it. I'm going to be going to the screens multiple times throughout this entire live cast, so don't be shy. Let's see if anyone's saying hi to me as I slip on my glasses so I can see. Cosetta Wade, if I'm saying that right, thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it. Oh, Mr. Nate is watching. Hi, Mr. Nate and Miss Savannah and Mr. Fetty. My family, of course. Thank you guys for watching. So don't forget, keep going to those screens. Put in your name and where you're watching from so I can say hello or ask a question. You know it's my favorite part of these. We are going to go back to the artifacts now, so come on over. So this case has a lot of items in it, and we're just going to showcase a few. But we were talking about their wedding. Now, I think what I forgot to tell you is that following the wedding ceremony, the newly married Reagans went back to the Holden's house for dinner and cake. The next morning, they actually took their honeymoon in Arizona, and while in Arizona, they spent time with Nancy Davis, I guess, Nancy Davis's parents, because they happened to be vacationing in Arizona as well. So a few of the items in this case relate to what I just said. So I said that they went to the Holdens to have cake following the ceremony. We actually have the cake topper here on display, and we also have Mrs. Reagan's bouquet that she carried for the wedding ceremony. Now, probably most special in this case is we also have Mrs. Reagan's wedding ring. When she passed away in 2016, it was part of her estate. It came here to the Reagan Foundation, and we knew we had to add it to this case. The other item I want to highlight in this case, and again, there's many other objects, but the objects I want to highlight in this case is one of my favorite artifacts in this entire museum. It's called the Amalfi Valentine. And it's called that because one of President and Mrs. Reagan's homes over the years was a house on Amalfi Drive. And they lived in that house. Now, flash forward until the early 2000s, and the Reagan Foundation receives a phone call from this man. He is the current owner of the Amalfi Drive house. He's been in his backyard. He's been clearing brush and cutting away bushes. And as he was doing that, he unveiled a section of his backyard cement that had been covered for years. And when he uncovered it, what he found was this actual piece of concrete with a heart, sort of probably done with a finger or a stick or a stone. And in the heart, it said RR plus NR that Ronald Reagan had made so many years ago. He offered to actually cut it out of his backyard, which is what he did. He drove up to the Reagan Library. Mrs. Reagan came to the Reagan Library. He presented the piece of his backyard to Mrs. Reagan, and then she asked if we would keep it here at the library to kind of put it on display and tell that lovely love story. I think it's so fitting to showcase Ronald Reagan's love to his wife, the Amalfi Valentine. So we are going to talk about some more items on display in this section, but first I'm going to see if anyone else has added to the screen. Being told one other person has added to the screen, so let's see who else we have up here. Greg Watkins Jr. They really did. He says out of all the presidents and first ladies, President Reagan and Nancy had the best love story ever. They really did love each other. They really, really did. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. A lot of people sometimes thought that that love might have been fake or for the cameras, and we're going to talk about that, how we know that it actually really wasn't. Thank you for that. So before we do that, we're going to go to some items here. Now, the two of them truly could not bear to be apart. Over the course of their relationship, Ronald Reagan wrote his wife over 700 love letters, notes, cards, and in many of them he actually drew handwritten cartoons in those cards and in those letters. Mrs. Reagan would often leave little notes around the house for her husband to find. Now behind me here, to the left of me, we actually have some of the love letters that he wrote her, but to the right of me, we have some telegrams that he wrote her over the years. And this one over here is from September 23rd, 1954. Ronald Reagan was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, maybe working on a movie or working for GE Theater. And in the telegram, he writes, "Darling, only 28 more days of emptiness. I love you." Now, Merv Griffin, I'm sure of, many of you know who Merv Griffin is. He was very close friends with Ronald and Nancy Reagan. And he was once doing an interview with Larry King. And he was asked about the Reagans. And I'm going to read to you what Merv Griffin said. He said, "They were never without each other. And when they went to Washington and she was sort of criticized or laughed a bit for her adoring looks at him, well, those are real. And that's the way they really are in private. I've watched them on long walks. I've watched them on the beach in the Bahamas. There was a lot of hand-holding and a lot of talking to each other. They are two people who are very, very much in love." Now, in fact, for their 31st wedding anniversary, Ronald Reagan wrote Nancy Reagan a handwritten note. And in that anniversary note, he said, "I more than love you. I'm not whole without you. You are life itself to me. When you are gone, I'm waiting for you to return so I can start living again." So truly a love story for the ages. Now, many years later, Mrs. Reagan actually published a book. We're going to show it later. The book's called "I Love You, Ronnie." And the book had a lot of the love letters that that her husband had given to her over the years, as well as some commentary that she wrote into the book. And one of the things she wrote in the book was, "If either of us ever left the room, we both felt lonely. People don't always believe it, but it's true. Filling the loneliness, completing each other, that's what it still meant to us to be husband and wife." So let's go back to the screens before we continue with these objects on display. Again, I'm going to keep going to these. So jump on, just tell me where you're watching and your name so I can say hi or ask a question. Yes, Greg, that's a great point. They made one movie together, Hellcats of the Navy. So thank you for making that point up. And Bell Beaker, the greatest president of my lifetime, a true gentleman and conservative. Thank you so much for that. We agree that he truly was a great man. So again, there are many objects behind me that I haven't even touched upon. And if you come to the Reagan Library, you can come and you can see them for yourself. But we thought it would be fun to actually show some items to you now that actually are not on public display here at the Reagan Library that really highlight their love story. So the first one I want to talk about is an anniversary gift that Ronald Reagan gave his wife in honor of their 25th wedding anniversary, so 1977. And he gave her a silver presentation platter. And on that platter, it's engraved, I'm going to read it. "Dear Mrs. Reagan, 15 years ago I told you that tin could never reflect the 10 golden years we had spent together. Now I find that silver cannot reflect the 25. If he should grant a golden anniversary, I'll still be saying I don't deserve you. I just love you with all my heart. Your husband." Now, Mrs. Reagan so cherished that platter that when Ronald Reagan became president of the United States, she brought the platter with her to the White House. It then came back with them to their home in Bel Air following the presidency. And then when she passed away, it came here to the Reagan Library. And both President and Mrs. Reagan have office space here at the Reagan Library. And so when she passed away, we added the presentation platter to her office. Now, the other object not on public display that we wanted to share is also currently in her office. I mentioned earlier when the president was writing all those letters to her, he used to love to draw little cartoons. And one year he drew her a little cartoon. He named the cartoon Jigs. She loved it so much she framed it. And just like the presentation platter, that framed cartoon went with her to the White House, went with her to their home in Bel Air, and then came here. And in Ronald Reagan's writing on that cartoon, it says, "Dearest wife, a portrait of Jigs, who was a married man who couldn't begin to be as happy as you've made me, ITWWW." And then in parentheses it says, which stands for In the Whole Wide World, by Ronald Reagan. So just such a sweet relationship they have. I don't know if my husband's watching, but if you're watching, take note. We're going to go back to the screens. No one's commented. Just let me know. Give me your name. Tell me where you're watching. I'd love to say hello to you. I'll go to those screens one more time. We do really appreciate interacting with you, so don't be shy. So before we go back to the screen for the last time, we're going to talk really briefly about some of the items we have in our store that showcase their love or kind of talk about their love. And one of them actually includes an actual artifact, and I will get to that in a second. The first item from the store we want to share with you, and again, these are just a few items in our store. You just go to reaganlibrary.com/store and you can find a whole bunch of items. There's a Nancy Reagan collection, a Ronald Reagan collection, a Reagan Library collection. But in our store, we sell these Reagan Library wine glasses. And we thought it'd be fun to share with you because in so many pictures we have of the Reagans, they're toasting each other, they're toasting their friends or their family. And so you too could have sort of toasting wine glasses in your home, just something really fun. Again, reaganlibrary.com/store. The other item that I want to mention is an actual artifact we have here on display. Now hang tight, I'll explain how it ties into our store. We keep talking about things that Ronald Reagan did for Nancy Reagan on their anniversary. Well, we have something on permanent display in the Reagan Library that is a gift that Nancy Reagan gave to her husband on their wedding anniversary, and they're a set of cufflinks. The cufflinks is a calendar month to March, made out for March of '52, and there is a gemstone on the number 4 to actually mark their anniversary. Ronald Reagan so loved these cufflinks that he called them his lucky cufflinks, and in fact he wore them for the famous Tear Down the Wall speech in 1987. Those cufflinks are on permanent display in the Reagan Library galleries, but our museum store has created a replica of those lucky cufflinks that you can purchase for yourself. So again, reaganlibrary.com/store, and you can have the same lucky cufflinks that Ronald Reagan loved so much, given to him by his beloved wife. The other item I wanted to showcase from the store, we talked about the book that Nancy Reagan published called I Love You, Ronnie, which highlights many of the cards and letters and notes that her husband wrote her over the years. And so we also do sell this in our store, and it's a really lovely book because it's not just the love letters and stuff, but she has comments in there as well. So you can read what he wrote to her and then hear some of her thoughts about these as well. So those are the items we wanted to highlight from the store. I'm being told there's one more comment on the board, which I thank you so much, because I put on my glasses. Greg again, Greg, thank you. And you're from Washington State. How accurate was the Reagan movie? You know, it was pretty accurate. We found that I don't think there's really anything that was inaccurate. They really had to cover their wide scope of their life, and they did a really good job. What we actually liked most about the movie is that we felt it did a really great job of bringing Ronald Reagan back into the conversation. So that's what we most appreciated about it. Now, speaking of the movie, if anyone, you live in Washington State, so maybe you don't live so close, but if you're watching this online, Craig, maybe you'll also watch the next thing online. Later on this month, or maybe next month, check our website, reaganlibrary.com/events. We are bringing to the Reagan Library Mark Joseph. Mark Joseph is the producer of the Reagan movie. He's the one that worked tirelessly for about 10 years to bring it to the big screen. And he has written a book that is the behind the scenes of the movie. And he's going to come to the Reagan Library. He's going to talk about the book. He's going to do a book signing about the book, on the book, and then we will be live streaming that. So for those of you who live locally, come on out. It's a free event. And if you don't live locally, you can watch that discussion on our YouTube page. And Kim, thank you. Thank you for watching the Reagan movie. Thank you for watching this. We so appreciate it. So I want to thank all of you for tuning in. We were sort of talking a little bit earlier that we do these on the first Wednesday of every month. I actually think that next month we will not be coming to you live on the first Wednesday of April because we have a really special surprise in April, and we want to come to you live when we can actually announce that surprise. So watch our website so we tell you when we're going to go live. It's something you probably don't want to miss. It'll be really cool. I see Kim asked, is Nancy Reagan in the library? Do you mean, do we have information on her in the library? 100%. We have an actual gallery on her. It includes her baby christening gown. It includes gifts that were given to her while she was First Lady. It includes, her passport is in there. Her baby shoes are in there. Clothes that she wore during the White House years are in there. I can't tell you which ones because we continually rotate them out, but her wedding dress has been on display. The coat, she wore the same green coat for Christmas every year, that's been on display. So we have a really nice gallery dedicated to Mrs. Reagan. And Kim, her ring, yes, so, her ring. Her actual wedding ring is on display in the case behind me, and that's what we showed you. When she passed away, it was part of her estate, not that she didn't want it buried with her, she wanted it saved. And so we worked with her family, and we actually put it on display. Dennis is saying the story of how he opened, oh, yes, wow, good for you for remembering that. Dennis is talking about, President Reagan, passed away in 2004 after a long bout with Alzheimer's disease, and just prior to his passing he had been asleep for a handful of days, and just before he passed away he actually opened up his eyes and looked into Mrs. Reagan's eyes, and they were able to sort of connect one last time. It's a really amazing moment. And you're reading my turn. Oh, that's great. I love it. Thank you. And we sell all these books in our museum store as well. So Kim, we do hope you visit. I don't know where you live, but we're open, I think it's 362 days of the year, 10 to 5, every single day. So come on out, because not only does one ticket get you to the Reagan Library and Museum, it gets you in the Air Force One Pavilion, it gets you into our special exhibition, which we talked about last month, which is our Dead Sea Scrolls exhibition. So it really is an amazing experience and a great way to spend the day. It's well worth your price. So thank you all for tuning in. Stay tuned for when we're going to come to you live in April. I think it's something you'll all enjoy, and we always appreciate that you tune in and spend your time with us. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
I think it's all too common in marriages that no matter how much partners love each other, they don't thank each other enough. And I suppose I don't thank Nancy enough for all that she does for me. So Nancy, in front of all your friends here today, let me say thank you for all you do. Thank you for your love. And thank you for just being you. You got a cuddle up?